Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to the opening breakfast briefing here at Sustainability Live London. Normally I write an introduction for these kind of things, but two things have somewhat overtaken proceedings today. One, the fact you are here. Well done. Just well done everybody. I'm proud of every single person here. Yes. See, this is why you write openings. And secondly, I would just like to speak for all of the panellists on stage. We were in the speaker room about 20 minutes ago, and I did a quick lap of the networking floor and saw nobody. And I was slightly worried. I thought this tube strike has really, really curtailed things. And then found out security hadn't opened the doors. So again, an introduction that writes itself. But anyway, let's move on to our opening session. This is the breakfast briefing. This is Women in Sustainability. And I will tackle the obvious elephant in the room to begin with, and that is an increasingly middle-aged white male from the home counties hosting a Women in Sustainability event. Now, I'm going to address this from the start. And sorry, I know I say in the panels the best ones are when I say the least, but I want to tackle this from the start. One thing that annoys me at events is when there is a women in or some kind of gender-based discussion at a panel, at an event, is the number of times a female host is brought in for that one session, which sort of defeats the object of it. But anyway, let's get to it. Let's start our opening session, and let me introduce our panellists first. Closest to me, I'm joined by Márcia Balisciano, Chief Sustainability Officer, Global Head of Corporate Responsibility at RELX. Next, Philippine Dassault, Group Chief Sustainability Officer at Dassault Systèmes. Angela Hultberg, Global Sustainability Director at Kearney. And on the far side, Moira Thomas, Group Sustainability and ESG Director at Currys. A warm welcome to our panellists, please. I always forget how long people's job titles are at these events and never take a big enough breath to start with. But what I'd love to do, to save my breath, is to get all of you to briefly introduce yourself, just in 30 seconds, just to introduce yourself to the room. Márcia, if I could start with you.
Yes, I am very lucky to be the founding head of sustainability at RELX, and we are a company that employs 36,500 plus people around the world, and we focus on what we call our unique contributions to society, which look at advancing science, avoiding risk, promoting the rule of law and access to justice, and fostering communities.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Philippine and I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer of Dassault Systèmes, which is a software company that serves 12 industries, from manufacturing to infrastructure to even the health sector. And I've had the joy of being its Chief Sustainability Officer for 3 years now.
And I'm Angela. I work with sustainability at Kearney. We're a management consulting firm, so we advise other companies like these. And I advise then on sustainability topics.
Hi, and I'm Moira Thomas. I work at Currys. I'm our Group Sustainability and ESG Director. I've been there for 4 years, and I really enjoy kind of working in sustainability as part of helping everyone enjoy amazing technology.
Thank you very much indeed. Saved my breath as well. Lovely to do those brief introductions. Let's start with a bit of inspiration and each of your own stories and how you first got into sustainability, just to give us some context before we get onto the wider conversation. Márcia, if I could start with you, how did you get first into the industry?
I came to the United Kingdom as a student, and I was working at what was then called the American Chamber of Commerce, and they wanted to set up a committee to look at an emerging topic called CSR, and I raised my hand and said, I'd like to coordinate that. And I thought that was quite interesting. And then eventually, when I finished my studies, I was introduced to my then CEO, Sir Crispin Davis, who said that he was looking for someone to develop a global community program. And the company had gone through a merger, so the history of the business is Dutch and British. Both parts go back over 100 years. And he was thinking about, how to bring things together as one company. And so that was his interest. It was a very discrete piece of work. And he told me that my job was going to be 2 years. That's what he thought. I do see him from time to time, and I say, look, all these years later, I'm still there. Because about 6 months into the job, I saw that there was paper circulating around the office. There were questions being asked of our business that no one quite knew the answer to. Things like, how are we avoiding child labor in our supply chain? How much sustainable paper were we buying? We didn't know the answer to those questions. So I raised my hand. I said, I think this is all part of the same thing. I want to change my job title, and I'd like to take this on. And I think my colleagues were just so grateful that they could pass all those queries on to someone else. And that's how I began.
Philippine.
That's a great story. So I've started very early on from the impact side, because I'm an economist by training, and I started my career in finance. But I was working on emerging markets, so North Africa, Eastern Europe, and a lot of those deals were on energy. And very early on, I saw the impact of what climate change was already doing and the emergence of renewable energies. So I guess that's how I started on sustainability. At the time, the term CSO didn't exist, but I've been working in sustainability all my career, so 25 years. Yeah, that's how I started. And since then, I've been really driving my career choice and my journey in terms of where I thought we could have the most impact. So chasing the impact.
Angela.
Yeah, I started as a tax lawyer, and maybe that's my biggest career advice of all. Life's too short to be a tax lawyer. So that was a 5-month career, and then I didn't want to do that anymore. So I went to Scania, a Swedish truck manufacturer, got really into transport. And then I went to IKEA, a home furnishing retailer from Sweden, for those of you who haven't heard of it. And that's where I discovered sustainability. So I was in transport. We started talking about alternative fuels, things like that. Sustainability was already back then. This was a very long time ago. Very present in everything IKEA did. And after a while, I realized, this is all I want to do. So it started with alternative fuels, went into electrification, and from there on, it's a slippery slope to sustainable investment, circularity, and everything else. And then I took what I learned in IKEA, and I had the great opportunity to meet and learn from a lot of people, and trying to put that to good use now to help others to accelerate.
That's our opening quote of the day. Life is too short to be a tax lawyer. I need to start writing these down. Moira.
A bit like Márcia, mine's got a student kind of link to it. So I studied at the University of Bath and did natural sciences there. And as part of a lot of their degrees, you could do a year in industry. So I thought, yep, that sounds great. Get some kind of real experience before going out into the big world after university. And as the deadline was approaching, I was kind of getting slightly nervous that I'd not found anything yet, because I was being picky, but also being quite resolute. It's important to find the thing that's right for you, Moira. Eventually, this opportunity came up at Waitrose to join their environmental management team. It was at the time, there were 2 of us. So yeah, I spent a year there, had an amazing year.
Sounds a slightly optimistic word for 2.
Well, I made it a team, right, because there were 2 of us. But it meant that I really had the chance to roll up my sleeves, really get involved in the work, but also had the structured kind of development program of a student placement scheme. I had a brilliant year, so good that after my final year of studies, they were expanding the team with 2 permanent roles. So I went back and spent 15 years actually across the John Lewis partnership. So sometime in Waitrose, sometime in John Lewis. I'm always in sustainability roles. So I'm retail sort of through and through.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I do more of these panels than is probably healthy. But a lot of these, when it's a women in panel, I start with there aren't enough women in leadership roles. But sustainability is something of an outlier. I did some research, believe it or not, that I believe some statistics are saying more than half of CSOs are women now. There's so many different statistics out there, but I think that's the general gist of it. Why is sustainability different in that sense? And maybe what can other industries learn from that? Philippine, I'll start with you.
Well, I think we were talking about this in the 20 minutes before as we're preparing as well. I think there's a lot to do with the fact that sustainability as a C-suite role is very out of the ordinary. It's, as Angela was saying, I mean, you wouldn't get another C-suite role where you don't actually have a budget and you don't actually have a team, but you're supposed to be doing things. So I guess maybe the drive, yet I think that there's also not so many roles where you get to have such passionate people and you can build on that passion and get amazing people on board, whether or not they're on your team or across the organization. So I think I would say that the big difference in terms of sustainability was that it was also something new. And initially, maybe people didn't realize what impact it would have in terms of organizational change. But however, what you're seeing also today is a little bit of the reverse. Now that people have come to realize the importance of the role of a CSO within an organization, which is about creating new business models, which is about real change agent of transformation within the organization, increasingly you're seeing actually more men coming up as the CSO. So I think, yeah, that's about it.
I think there's two ways actually this is going. I think the gap between leaders and laggards in sustainability is actually growing because, as you say, some will see now that sustainability should not be reporting into marketing and communication. It's about business strategies. It's about new revenue streams, cutting cost, supply chain resilience, things like that. I think we'll see an influx of male CSOs. Or they think that actually sustainability is super important, very important, not urgent, because now we have to focus on geopolitics and tariffs and AI. So actually it's not a C role. Well, just maybe you can report into, some procurement, maybe. Sounds good. So I do think it's not a coincidence, maybe, that this is, like we spoke about, the only C-suite role where you're asked to lead through others. And I was telling Philippine before, I'd like to see a CFO with that role description. No mandate, no budget, but you should inspire and lead through it. Inspire the CPO to cut cost, please. You can't actually tell him to or her, but you should engage and inspire. It is a role that comes with passion, but that doesn't mean that passion is enough to do it. And this is a pet peeve of mine, I'll say. How can we still see C-suite leaders with no prior experience? Imagine a chief procurement officer who's never worked a day in procurement. I am very passionate about making money. Since I had kids, I'm even more passionate about financial security. Does not make me qualified to be a CFO. Yet we do still see chief sustainability officers with the one qualification that they are very passionate about it, especially since they had children. They're even more passionate about it, and that's great. But it's not enough to be in a C-suite position leading something that will fundamentally change the business of the business.
I would say that there is that element of caring, and I'm pre-saging your question about what are the transferable learnings between the CSO role and other opportunities for women leadership. And I think that it's innate that women often are feeling they need that element. It can't be obscure. They need to understand what they're working toward, and I think that that's really critical. Thinking about where it sits in the organization. I'm picking on my former CEO today, but I remember at one point he said to me, I'm going to streamline. I know exactly where you're going to go. You are going to report to communications. And I said, over my dead body, because that's CR, corporate responsibility, as PR. No, I won't do it. And we had kind of like a face-to-face standoff, and then finally had to give up because I wasn't going to do it. Because this really needs to be integral. I loved what you both said. This is a transition role. And I am lucky. I do have a small team, but and we're not as big as some organizations, but we have a lot of influencing to do without direct control. But, we need to kind of work and infiltrate and win hearts and minds. And the way that we can do that is working across the organization by enlisting colleagues, because, it isn't one and done, and it isn't me, it's everybody. It has to be how we think, why we get up and go to work every day. So one thing that's been very helpful for us are these networks that we created, and my team doesn't always own them. They might be organic. They're somewhere in the organization. We have over 10% of our people who are part of these groups, and they might be on responsible AI, our community, or green teams, whatever they are. But this is a way to get across the organization. So I think it's very important that we enlist, and we're good cheerleaders.
I'm going to jump in there if I can, because I'm not sure if you could see my notes there. And I just wrote down what Angela said about leading through others. And I think that is so, so important, because it's such an unusual situation. But it's also very easy to say, yes, you must lead the organisation through other people. As you say, you must influence. That's not easy. There's no real playbook for that. I'd love to get more of your take on how you go about doing that. Moira, if I could start with you on that, just to evolve this question a bit further. How do you go about that kind of challenge?
Yeah, I think thinking about the question about why we've got more females in CSO roles, I wonder whether there's some of the kind of skills that naturally kind of females tend to present that have helped that be the case. And I think that's then true about leading through others. Often we're in roles in sustainability, we're trying to support other people, but equally we've got to be able to challenge and push back as well. And I think that sort of emotional intelligence of being able to kind of read where people are at, whether it is support or encouragement or challenge that's needed. I think there's also something about not being afraid to ask the awkward question or kind of assert your view. And I guess I've been quite lucky to get where I am so far, and I'm not CSO yet, because I've had great people supporting me, believing in me, and showing me the way, and that's both male and female kind of bosses. So I think you learn very much through others, through doing, but I think that's also building on just some of those kind of skills that we have as individuals.
I think leading through others, if we want to get serious, like proper serious, and actually do the work, what gets measured gets done. So when I hear lead through others, and what I do, 80% of the advising I do, how do you embed sustainability in the organization? So it's not your job to inspire, Sven Anderson to buy electric trucks because he's the transport manager, but rather to say, hey, you have a decarbonization target. Like, you need to reduce by 50% by 2028, and your bonus is tied to whether or not you achieve that. That is inspire through it. Nobody is more inspired than through their incentive programs, right? I've never met a cost reduction manager in my life, and I hope in the future we don't need sustainability managers, because much like cost reduction is just going to be a very integrated part of doing business, we always consider cost, right? And hopefully one day we'll always consider sustainability, but we're not there yet. So that net zero 20 whenever target needs to be broken down in tangible and measurable targets. What does that mean for your transport department? What does that mean for R&D? How do they design for sustainability? What are the KPIs? What does it mean for procurement, et cetera, et cetera? That's how you embed it in the organization. You need a healthy dose of change management to go with that, because as was it you said, or you, Moira, who said it's
Yeah.
all about change management. There will be resistance, so please don't skimp out on that little,
Yeah.
component of a transformation. But that's how you inspire.
And I couldn't agree more with what you said. And actually, I think we all agree to say that it's kind of a transitional role in the sense that ideally, remember like a decade ago, we had chief digital officers. Do these exist anymore? No, they don't, because obviously. And I hope, and I think that in the future, that's what we'll have as well for chief sustainability officers, because it will be embedded throughout the organization. However, before we do that, we need to make sure that it's not going to be greenwashing everywhere, but instead that it's going to be measured, embedded, and actually in the objectives of all of the different departments. And that's really what we're striving to do. Across the
I
organization.
think they might be coming back with AI. It might be a new day for
That's
the
true.
CDO.
But that's a different kind of CDO, right?
Well, I think that we always need somebody leading the band. And, I've been hearing throughout my career, we're going to do this right, and you're going to not need your job because it's going to be so embedded. Absolutely. I have never created a sustainability strategy. It's sustainability in our strategy. Yeah. But we still need someone, and we need people who are, holding the company to account. And they don't need to be called. I don't care. I've been called lots of things. In terms of our titles, that may change. But it's the essence which needs to remain, to achieve those targets and to set those targets. We need to be scanning the marketplace. We need to understand always where we are, and what good looked like 2 years ago, 5 years ago is not what good looks like in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So we need to be kind of futurists where we're looking forward. And so just like you wouldn't say, I don't know if a CFO has ever been told, if we do this right, everybody's going to be managing their money well, and no, we see that as a role that needs a seat at the table.
Let's move on to diversity if we can, and I never like to get political on this stage for my own safety. So let's approach politics very gently here, because we know diversity programs have been under increasing pressure over the last few months, last year or so. Do you feel it's so important for us to still be having these conversations with that kind of backdrop currently, when diversity programs have never been under more pressure? Who do I start with this one? I'm going to start with you, Angela. Sorry.
Yes. Do we need to talk? Yes, obviously we do. Are we, do we see equal representation for women, people of color, disabled people? No, we don't. So obviously we need to have it. I will say I'm slightly bored by the conversation, because at this point I feel like the business case for diversity has just been proven over and over and over again. Diverse companies outperform those who are not, right? And I can't believe it's still a discussion, right? If I have a problem, say I have a problem, I put it on the table, I take 10 of my very smart consultants, stand around the table, look at the problem, give me a solution. Now, if I have 10, young 27-year-old white guys who all went to London School of Economics, all come from, similar backgrounds, I'll get 1, maybe 2 solutions to that problem. Now, if I have 10 people, very diverse backgrounds, different experiences, all of that, I'll get 10 ways to solve that problem, and then I'll pick the cherries, and, off I go find a great solution. Like, why would I want as little input as, but it makes absolutely no sense to me. And so the whole conversation, do we need DEI? Yeah, obviously we do. But the business case has been proven, so it baffles me that we still do, honestly. And then I will say, given the political climate and everything, and speaking to our friends in the US and everywhere, where it is really under attack, where you can no longer be a supplier to the government if you have an active DEI program, for instance, I think we'll hear a lot of companies speaking slightly differently, but the work remains, right? Every time we hear we will move away from data technologies, that means renewable energy. Every time we hear like talented, attracting talent or like attracting perspective, that's DEI. So I think a lot of the companies will continue the work because it makes financial sense, but maybe speak about it differently.
There's probably something about holding on to those kind of positive examples where companies are still very much continuing with their approach, and perhaps they are changing their language, perhaps they're not. And I think because ultimately it's cultural, right? If you've got an organisation that really believes in having inclusive teams and therefore getting the best results, that's cultural. So I think there are plenty of examples where companies are still doing that. I know, for example, at Currys, we've not rowed back at all. We're just as committed now as we were. And it's because, as you say, we believe that that's going to be better for our business. And being a retailer, we also believe that it's better for our customers as well. We want to help everyone enjoy amazing technology. We believe we can only do that if we are everyone ourselves.
And same here, and specifically coming from a STEM industry, it's already very challenging to attract and have the right gender balance. So we're not stopping the work for sure, and we're actually doubling down because what we found in most recent research is that it starts from a very early age. So we try to go ahead and strike partnerships with different schools and try to embed that all through our cases, for sure.
And I think it's been about everyone. We need to ensure that our language is about all. And in our own profession, there was a LinkedIn study in 2023 that said to close the green skills gap, because there is one, and colleagues have made the point that there are, more men coming into the CSO space. We need to make sure that we continue to be about all, and in the widest sense of what that means. Perspective and backgrounds. Age, absolutely. So I think this has always been important. We can see numbers don't lie. That we still have work to do, and we need to keep doing the work.
And I think maybe most of what you said in STEM, because a lot of the new jobs that will come out of the green transition, the energy transition, all of that, a lot of the new jobs created by a green economy will be in STEM. And so I think, if anything, that's where we need to really focus to make sure that women are, going to universities, getting that degree in data science, mathematics, all of it, right? We desperately need more women in STEM. And, let's not forget, women were STEM, right? It was women who created the computers and the code and put the man on the moon and all of that. We just we just forgot, or, we were told it was someone else. But yeah, I think that will probably need to be the focus.
Well, that leads me on very nicely to where I want to go next, and that's advice to younger people coming into the industry. Before I get onto that, though, I will go to the room and see if there's any immediate questions that anyone wants to ask. This is always when people do something to their hair just to disrupt where I'm looking. I will jump down to the front.
I wondered if you have ever compared your salary to male-dominated C-suites in your region, in your area, and what that looks like.
Yes. Didn't look great. No, I think. Look, I'm not. I'm not giving out C-suite roles, and I'm not interviewing for all that. But I have been interviewing for sustainability offer roles, and I've been, part of the process many times. It is not comparable, I would say. It's just plain and simple, not comparable to a CPO or a CFO, in my experience.
Well, let's push that on. What can we do about that? If there's an issue there, how do we look to address that?
To me, it comes down to how you view sustainability, right? If you see sustainability as strategy, as business transformation,
As value creation.
value creation, exactly, and cost reduction for that matter. I think that would sort of give a sense of it being more business critical and therefore value it higher.
And I think, those who are in the decision-making capacity for what these roles should be paid, if those are more diverse and we have, more leadership that, can take a view which is more holistic, then we will see that filter through. I mean, if it's, if it's more traditional, let's put it that way, then we may see that as a bit of a block.
Hi, I'm Isabel Devano at the Carbon Trust. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the panel. I have a question that is a little bit left field. In your leadership roles, do you also engage with the board? And do you find that, again, that women in sustainability approach has a particular edge when working with board members, which tend to also come from some specific demographics and have some kind of patterns to how they are? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because a lot of my clients, that's where they struggle as CSOs, is how to get it up the chain rather than how to get it down.
I can go. So I do engage with the board quite regularly, at least 3 times a year, and I work all throughout the year. Me and my team work throughout the year with our independent director on sustainability, and that's an extremely fruitful and helpful relation and connection to have actually to move things forward internally as well. So I guess I don't have an advice, but I think it's essential. I mean, if you don't have that connection up through the board, it's very difficult to get things done sometimes. So it can really help facilitate and accelerate the transformation that we're all looking for in terms of throughout the organization, having that connection,
And I will say we've seen a period where boards try to educate themselves, right? So people like me are invited to do sessions with the board, to challenge them, to maybe educate them, but also to ask some tricky questions. So there seems to be a trend in that direction.
I think there's something about trust for me, building those relationships with the people on the board so that they trust the advice, the views that you're bringing. We're quite lucky kind of at Currys. We've got a really strong board. We've had an ESG committee as well, and I think that's enabled them to get deep into some of these issues, understand the challenges. And actually, I often think the boards are some of sustainability people's best friends because they're also thinking about the long-term future of the business.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And I would just quickly add that if you don't ask, you don't get. So if you're not already on the agenda for the board, ask to be put on there. They're interested. They want to know. They don't have that visibility. And I've been very fortunate since my first year. I have engaged with our board, variously constituted, and we're very lucky because we have a board that is quite diverse. But the challenge, I would say, is about getting us on boards.
That's true.
If you learned that life is too short to be a tax professional, and I have great esteem for my tax colleagues, and we actually make products that serve tax professionals. I think the traditional person they're looking for is someone who comes from finance. So it's great, Philippine, that you've got that background, but we need to make that case about what we bring, that holistic view, that we are about the transformation and the business value, and we're going to add a really great perspective. We have not won that conversation yet.
Okay, we've got 2 questions at the back, 1 at the front, and not a lot of time to do it in. So we can keep these very punchy. I'd be grateful, because I know at least one of our speakers has another engagement to attempt to get to this morning. So if I can start over here.
Thanks for great speaking today. Thank you. Fantastic lessons to learn from you all. I have a question Angela mentioned earlier. The sustainability roles are often somebody who gets it's a bolt-on. So finance, you're now the sustainability person. So they don't bring the years of experience that you have, but resource constraints and also skills in the market to actually get the skills in sustainability. What's the solution for that? Because it's a challenge. There's no people to do the sustainability roles, and the resources, you can't appoint someone specifically with the 25 years of experience. So what do you see as a solution or opportunity there?
First of all, I do think there's a lot of people, actually. I think there's more people than we think. I think some people have been doing sustainability work for, 3 decades. They just called it something else, right? But there are a lot of people in this space. It's been, it's still new compared to some other things, but it's been going on for a long time. The problem is, are we ready to invest in those people? Are we ready to take the people who has this skill set and lift them up and view them as equal to more conventional business people? Because we're still not seen as businessmen. I love what you said. The value we bring, right? I will make our supply chain safe. I will make sure it's not disrupted by, a flood and a landslide wiping out railway in Hungary. How are you going to handle that? What happens when the logistic networks goes down, right? We need to see the value, and then I think we need to invest in the people. But there are people, and more people are coming every day too. So it's about finding them and lifting them up and treating them as business critical.
And I would just add to this that it's not one given set of skill sets, other than having a very diverse set of skill sets, which is why you need a great team as well to do it. But what I'm trying to say is that you can come also from a law background, from a finance background, like myself, like Angela, but you can also come from, there are a lot of procurement or supply chain manager. So it's not one skill set, and I do agree with you that I would not say that there's a shortage of people ready for that job.
Also, it's not brain surgery, right? You can learn a lot. Of course, if you've been in procurement for 20 years, of course you can just add sustainability, just as you look at cost, quality, safety, add sustainability. Boom, there you go. And work with it a few years and then become a sustainability manager. Just put in the work. But like you say, it's everything, right? From regenerative agriculture to charging infrastructure for electric vehicles, waste, energy, water, social impact. There's so much.
Thank you. I'm going to have to jump in to move. We've got 2 more questions we want to desperately try and squeeze in, just in the middle here.
Thank you. Great panel. Anthony Levy from Circularity first. Like you guys, I think guys spend a lot of time influencing on boards. And I absolutely agree that we've got to win the business case, right? This is not an emotive subject anymore. We've got to win the business case. I wondered if across the panel they could share any great examples where they've really proven that, or they've sold that business case, it's landed, and they've got the commitment from the board, and they've really delivered something meaningful.
Well, maybe one is the RELX SDG Resource Center, so the Sustainable Development Goals. And when we were thinking about the SDGs, we knew that we had products, tools, events that related to the SDGs. And we created something in 2017, which was the Resource Center. So we're curating content from across our business, making it available. And nice to do, wonderful, great. But actually, we convinced a consortium of 20 banks to, off the back of KPIs, because this is the sweet spot about what we do. We're about knowledge to enhance the work that our customers do, to agree to a revolving credit facility of $3 billion, where if we make the KPIs related to the resource center that we set out, that we could reduce the cost of holding that facility. Win-win, win-win.
Thank you very much. We have one final question. We are right up on time, so if this could be short and sweet, you would be my hero. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it is a very, very quick comment on the issue of women in sustainability and women in innovation. Innovation's been my topic for over 30 years. And at some point, actually, I just looked it up. I wrote an article in 2014, where have all the women gone? Because initially it was at least 50-50 in innovation events, also on the podium. And then in 2014, it was only men. So just as an aside, as a comment. And then the question is with the ESG regulations, it really was forced on many organizations to think about the topic. And then came the omnibus. Has it had any effect on how sustainability and reporting and thinking about sustainability has changed or not?
Yes. Sorry, okay, short, Neil, I'll promise. First of all, regulation, great. It creates a minimum standard hygiene factor. Are sustainability experts and accountants the same thing? They are not. Who signs a CSRD report? It's the CFO. Therefore, the finance office should be doing it, get some ESG capabilities in there. It's not the work, or it should not be the role of a sustainability officer to do reporting 6 months out of the year and then have 6 months left to actually do the work. You can have the most compliant CSRD report in the world and it can still say we're absolute shit. We're just transparent about it. So let sustainability people do sustainability work and let the business controllers do the reporting. Love the question.
Before I see the floor to Moira, just a little bit of controversy, because I think that, yes, it's great, the regulation, because it does bring in the, oh my God, what is this? And you have all the functions coming in to be able to meet the regulatory requirements. But back to what I was saying about leading the band, I know those ways to tell those stories, and I want to make sure that I continue to tell them. So I don't want to cede it completely, and haven't.
I think you're right. It's helping drive that integration of you need multiple different kind of skills, teams to get involved to produce that kind of compliant report. And I think the bit that's unhelpful that we're grappling a bit with is some of the overly prescriptive kind of regulation that ends up being very hard to tell your story, to be very hard to let people know what your business is about, what its priorities are. So I think that's the bit that we're grappling with, that actually then feels like this is a heavy administrative burden. We want to do our bit. We want to be able to be transparent about that. But it's definitely challenging.
Okay, well, I'm so sorry we are right up on time. I'm going to have to wrap things up. 3 key points for this from me that I've just got to cover off. 1, I need to allow more time for questions for upcoming panels because we could carry on for another half an hour. 2, for anyone who had me in the S-bomb bingo for today, you've lost. Angela was first. Normally it's me who's first to swear on this stage during an event. So apologies if you had me in the draw. And thirdly, if you want to go to the AWS workshop, that's at 9:30 in workshop room 2. That's unlocking data for AI and sustainability acceleration. That's now starting. Those are my 3 announcements. But for now, a warm thank you to all of our panel for joining us this morning.